Okay, what about politics?
Yes.
How do the algorithms affect our politics or global politics?
Once again, the algorithm doesn't have any particular political goal or intention in mind. It's just looking what works on you, what's going to get you to keep coming back. That's how I really think of it. There are two questions, like what's going to get you to come back, what's going to get you to stay. And for each and every one of us, that's going to be different. For me, the thing that had me hooked on social media was political conversation in the 2016 election. I was as addicted as I could possibly be. I was checking it all the time, and I was posting all the time. I had friends giving me compliments about how good my curation and my posts were. And when I look back at it, it's like, wait a second. I don't know if any of this stuff was true. I don't know what was true or not. I was posting things from sources that I'd never heard of before. And to see how our social media platforms have been weaponized, it really made me question, well, wait a second, what am I taking part in here? In that process, after learning about this stuff and working on the film, I've completely removed myself from these systems. And I've really switched to getting news from news sources and looking for trusted journalism and journalism that I can pay for that is providing an exchange in value and providing good journalism. I think one of the things I'm most fearful of is how these platforms have completely warped and distorted our political ecosystem. And to the point where it's also had this overlapping layer on affecting journalism, because now journalists are competing on these platforms. Journalists are competing for the clicks and for the attention. So the quality of journalism has suffered because they don't have the time to do thorough reporting like they used to. And so now everybody's in this like rat race, and they're all chasing clicks. We thought about that being in the film title too, chasing likes or chasing clicks. But what does that look like now, as this has had years and years and years of an impact on our entire information ecosystem? Some of our subjects say even if you aren't on social media yourself, you live in a world that has been reshaped by social media, where the journalists are now seeing things because of their Twitter feeds, where our president sees things because of his Twitter feed. By the way, nobody knows what President Trump sees on Twitter. Even if he were to go back and recreate another account following all the same users that he follows, the way and the order and the results, the order results of how things are shown are based on his particular search patterns and usage patterns. So, like, we can all watch the news networks that we think or suspect he might watch, or the newspapers that may or may not get to him, but nobody has real insight into what is being fed through his phone.
Maybe that'll be some research that will wind up in the Trump Presidential Library someday.
Yes.
But I think what you just said about journalism having to compete with social media in some ways speaks to the rise of conspiracy theories. And if here's hard journalism, science-based, fact-based, corroboration, valid news sources and so on, competing with, an underground in the basement of a pizza parlor ring of baby-eating pedophiles.
Right.
It's like, whoa, what's that? That's just like crazy.
We talk about Pizzagate in the film.
Yeah.
And the particular gunman who went to a place that had no basement, where the rumor was that, these kind of acts were happening in the basement. We've had responses from people in the public saying, no, it is true. You're misleading the public through what you're saying in the movie. And, conspiracy theories have gotten so... I just don't even know how to respond to claims like that. I mean, the flat earth conspiracy theory has just gone so viral, and we have really good science on this one. And yet many people are now saying, students are saying, oh, my teacher has been influenced by the round earthers, and trying to push back on science about whether or not the earth is round. It is just so baffling. Yet this is how persuasive and effective these platforms can be. This is how effective conspiracy can be on these platforms.
Yeah.
And just as a brief side note, where are conspiracy theories going viral? They're happening on the places where there's user-generated content that are driven by an advertising business model, right? They're not happening on the Netflixes and Hulus and HBOs where we pay for our content. So when we have a subscription, right, it's not happening in the traditional journalism news outlets that people are paying for subscriptions for, right, even if they're supplemented through advertising. So the places that we see conspiracy theory running rampant, it is, from my assessment, it's this advertising business model that has no regard for the truth, that says, send us everything you got, world. We're going to pour lighter fluid on everything we possibly can. We're going to let things go as viral as quickly as they possibly can, where the whole value system has been about no friction, eliminate friction, let things spread really, really quickly. And then, oh yeah, we'll have a content moderation group that will just, you know, catch the really, really extremely bad things. And the content moderation group can never keep up with the scale of the problem.
Right, I understand.
Right? Inherently, they're not compatible.
But I think it's also, I don't want to give the wrong impression that just by everybody getting off Facebook, we would stop, domestic terrorism or hate groups, because
no, absolutely not.
those exist
absolutely
separate and distinct from social media or advertising or artificial intelligence. That's just based on racism and hatred.
That has always been around and likely will continue to be around. Yet we have built tools that can amplify that hate and that misinformation. And that's really what we're seeing. We're seeing these things that in other parts of society would be regulated naturally by the people in the community, that on these platforms are being actively made to go viral.
One of the things that really struck me was basically, if the platform is free, then we're the product.
Exactly.
We are the product that's being sold. It's pretty scary.
That line is one that is so common in Silicon Valley that I almost didn't even put it into the movie, because everybody says this, oh yeah, and we all know it. And yet when we talk to the general public, it's still like this mind-shattering concept.
Yeah.
For me, that's one of the easiest rubrics that I try to use myself, in terms of, I am very skeptical of things that I don't pay for, right? And maybe it is a privileged mindset to say, look, I want to pay the $1 for my app or pay the few bucks for the thing that I'm using. But I am having less and less trust around the things that are giving us something for free and turning us or our data or our experience into some sort of monetization form that they're profiting from somebody else.
Yeah.
Because now we become a cog in the machine. We are the resource. We're being mined and extracted. Like, I don't want to be mined for my life experience for somebody else's financial gain. Like, I just don't want to take part in a system like that. And that is Google, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Snapchat.
And it's addictive. So it's a very powerful drug.
Absolutely.
And so I think it may be the most powerful, the most addictive drug for young people especially. The idea, the terror that would come into their hearts if they said, oh, you're kidding? I would have to give up all these things.
Right. It literally is a computer program that has reverse engineered, what are you most susceptible to?
Yeah.
All right. Let me show you all of the content in the known digital universe. I'm going to put everything in front of you, and I'm going to figure out what works on you and what you just keep coming back for. And once again, it's not what you want. It's not what you've asked for. It's not like, I really would love to have challenging conversations with people that I disagree with, or I want to be more informed about this particular issue, or I want to learn how to do this thing, or you know what, if I'm lonely, I really want to connect with other friends who are lonely. Like, we don't have any access to how the algorithm is optimized. We have no control over that. We are being force-fed a particular algorithm based on its values that we don't have transparency into.
Right.
These are opaque algorithms that the public can't see into and can't control. And they're controlling what we see, and in many ways now, who we are.
Yeah. One of the people you feature in your film is a guy I know, Roger McNamee, because he's a musician as well as early investor in Facebook and many others. But he, of course, sees it for what it is. He wrote the book called Zucked, which is all about the sort of bait and switch that Facebook represents right now. So they've got some pretty dire predictions. A lot of your guests are concerned for the future of democracy, for example.
Yeah, I think a lot of our subjects are just concerned about the future of the world in countless ways.
Yeah.
Democracy being one of the most vulnerable. Democracy is based around shared truth and compromise, right? It's about people coming together and saying, okay, how do we want our society to function? What are we going to agree on? How do we solve it? What kind of policies should we put in place? If we live in a world where everybody has their own customized view of the world, where everybody has their own customized and personalized news, which just seems like an oxymoron in and of itself.
Right.
If you have your own set of facts, your own customized facts that suit your tendencies, there's no opportunity to come together and say, okay, this is how we should deal with climate change. Because when you come to the table and somebody else is like, well, climate change doesn't exist, you can't then have the conversation. I've been looking at this, I'm going to geek out for a second, but from like an evolutionary perspective, where it's basically put us on our own little Galapagos islands, and you're on your Galapagos, I'm on my Galapagos, and we're all just drifting farther and farther away from each other as it's to customize everything for each and every one of us with our own little Truman shows. And it gets to the point where, like, the more you engage with it, the more it evolves, and the faster and faster you have reproduction. Now, just like with evolution, we're different species. Like, our ideas have now evolved to be incompatible with each other. Our ideas can no longer engage with one another. So how it is so difficult if there's somebody who has gone through their decade of mind warp and I've gone through my decade of mind warp, we can't agree on basic facts anymore.
Right.
So how do we have a shared conversation around what should we do as a society, as a democracy, as a country? There is no place for just a level one agreement of shared facts.
Yeah. And it's also, if you have your isolated island, you ultimately will devolve into this sort of survivalist mentality where you're just going to, everybody else is going to be seen as a threat.
Right.
And Lord of the Flies or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
So listen, we're talking about the
breakdown of everything.
Breakdown, an existential threat regarding the health of the planet, the fabric of our democracy, the trust in media, the bonds of the family unit, mental health of teenagers. So that model is working really well for the companies.
Yeah.
And as you say, they're kind of hemmed in by the stock market, so they can't really do a lot of change. What are we going to do? What can we do? And it can't just be, okay, I'm going to stop using Facebook or Twitter. Is there any regulatory agency? I know that in Europe and California, there's some growing efforts to try to rein this in.
Yeah, well, let me just frame this first. When you think about climate change and the scale of that problem and the complexity of that problem and how do we address it, we have everything from the individual actions to the company actions to the political actions. It goes all across the board. That's what I really feel like we need to do with our technology. I mean, it is individual actions that we can do just to protect ourselves, to protect your own family. It is putting pressure on the tech companies to change their code, to reprogram this stuff, to rewrite this stuff. And in many ways, this is easier than climate change in that the engineers could just redesign it and reprogram it. It's not a huge physical infrastructure that needs to change. But assuming that that's not going to happen anytime soon, the only other option really is regulation. And we're seeing other countries, and we're seeing Europe trying to put pressure. We're starting to have conversations in the United States. I think in many ways we're having the wrong conversation. Like antitrust is antitrust is just takes Exxon and Mobil and makes them Exxon and Mobil, right? As two separate entities now, and you still have climate change. So breaking up the companies only does so much. I think we really need, in my mind, the core part of the problem is this business model that is not designed to serve humanity, that we never expected to get as big as it is. Right. I mean, Twitter started as an art project, but now we're at a place where we know that this business model is inherently in conflict with human civilization. Like, that is my personal deepest takeaway from this whole thing. I will not trust these companies until they change their business model. How quickly and how proactively can they get off this business model? It might take a while. Come up with a plan. Come up with a transition plan. What's our transition energy source to get to regenerative?
And what's the agency that's going to supervise what's good for humanity? Exactly.
And this goes well above my pay grade, but I think that's we need something along the lines of a department of algorithms.
Yeah.
Or some of our subjects, Kathy O'Neill started a company that does algorithmic auditing. Great. You don't have to reveal your trade secrets to the world, but let people come in and review the algorithms and point out, hey, you've got racial bias in this algorithm. Hey, you've got this kind of bias in your algorithm. Hey, look at the consequences of your algorithms. algorithms and machine learning are so powerful. Like, we don't understand. Like, the average person doesn't get what they're doing. They are incredibly powerful. Machine learning, the ability for a computer program to learn on its own to solve a problem, is incredibly powerful. How do we apply that for humanity as opposed to figure out how to just extract and exploit humanity?
Now, I know you mentioned you've changed your behavior.
Completely, yeah.
So you're off social media.
Completely.
Yeah.
Life feels great. I love it. I haven't used them. I don't miss them. I installed these apps called, these plugins. It's a news feed eradicator. So if I go to Facebook or Twitter.com, like, literally nothing shows up. There's nothing to scroll through. I have some plugins that block the autoplay videos on the side of YouTube. So if somebody sends me a YouTube video, or if I really want to watch a particular YouTube video, I don't get sucked into a rabbit hole. These are just like little defenses that you can do.
And are those easy to find?
I actually don't even know if they're on our website right now, but I'll make sure that they get onto our website. But newsfeed eradicator, and look for a YouTube autoplay blocker.
Put them on your website.
Yeah.
And the website is
thesocialdilemma.com.
Socialdilemma.com. And you feel good.
When we were making this film, when we started making the film, I was a really heavy Facebook user. And I started to wean myself off as I was learning about this.
Yeah.
And I learned about this thing called the resurrection algorithm. So if you are a user, then you stop using, then the resurrection algorithm will try to resurrect you, try to like bring you back from the dead to come back to our comfy home and platform. So I started getting emails and started getting text messages over and over, them trying and testing all different stuff. Look at this person in the film industry who posted this thing. Look at your family member who posted this thing. Oh, a girl you had a crush on in high school posted this thing. Like, literally all these things were coming up into my feed, into my phone, into my text messages, trying to get me to come back. And when I was seeing that, I got so disgusted and so like angered at what they were doing to try to get me to come back. That actually made it much easier for me to remove myself from it.
Right.
And it gave me back my time, my creativity.
Yeah.
It gave me back just a headspace while we were working on the film.
Wow.
And I could feel it so tangibly. Like, I need to write the scene or figure out how we're going to make this transition work. And a notification would distract me for minutes on end.
Yeah.
And so for me personally, I don't miss them at all. I don't feel like I'm missing out on anything. I'm having more close relationships with my close friends and family through FaceTime, through platforms that I've paid for, through a Zoom call, or through just a phone call.
Yeah.
Right, so I'm getting greater quality of interaction there, and I get my information from reputable news sources. So there's nothing that I'm missing out on except for like maybe some gossip that I didn't really need in the first place.
Right. And I think we can still, I mean, people aren't going to stop sending emails. They're just not going to stop using search engines or shopping online.
Right.
But we can also use those tools in different ways. We can learn how to be a better cook. We can learn how to play an instrument. We can learn how to write a song. We can learn how to make things.
Absolutely.
We can actually be productive with those hours and hours that we can free up.
Absolutely.
And so that, you know, when we wean ourselves from this technology, we could be more engaged and more productive.
To be clear, like, I am not anti-technology. Like, I love technology. I use it all the time. I've always been a huge advocate for technology. But to go back to the themes that we bring up in the film, there's this analogy that Steve Jobs referenced about the computer being a bicycle for the mind that allows us to go farther, faster, more efficiently. When are these things, when are these computers, these phones, these apps, when are they serving us versus when are we being used? When are we the tool being served? Right? So it goes back to like an oversimplification is, are you paying for it or not? Right? Some of the things that you referenced, we do pay for, right? Some of the things I'm paying for my Apple phone that lets me do a FaceTime call, right? I could pay for recipes that I'm getting. There are some video content that you're paying for. You could pay for a masterclass and get high quality information that's going to push you and make you think. So when is it serving you versus when are you being used by the system?
Yeah. Well, it's a big problem, and your film was a real eye-opener. Certainly for me, I'm sure you've heard from everyone who's seen it that this is like, so many people must have said, wow, I had no idea.
Many people have said, I have no idea. Many people have said, now I understand why I feel the way that I feel.
Wow.
I think that was one of the responses that hit me just so powerfully, because like we all sense something's weird. We all sense that something's off. I feel like a lot of teenagers know like this isn't a healthy way to grow up. This is not how you want to grow up. I've met some teenagers who went to some digital detox camps and like went out into the wilderness and spent a week or more without their devices. And we're like, whoa, I didn't realize this is what life could be like.
Wow.
And when they come back to like the matrix that I don't want to call it the real world. It's like the matrix that we live in now. They recognize, wait a second, it doesn't have to be this way. I think that's the reason why I do have hope, is that people realize, wait a second, this could be better.
Yeah.
There's a line from Jaron Lanier in our film where people would say to him, well, Jaron, why are you such a pessimist about this? And he's like, no, I'm not a pessimist. I'm an optimist. I'm an optimist because I believe it could be better. It's those that are complacent with the status quo. They're the true pessimists. And that line just resonated with me so strongly. I think that's why I do, and my team, that's why we do the work that we do, because we believe that things could be better. We believe that this technology can be better, that it can serve humanity, serve society. I want a tool that's going to know, like, if you have a model that knows everything about me, how can it serve my interests when it knows that I'm lonely, and it knows that, hey, your friend Nick is lonely too right now, and the two of you are pretty close together, so we can have, like, why don't we foster that conversation? It could help advance us as a species, as opposed to exploit and extract.
Jeff Orlowski, thank you so much for coming back to eTown. I mean, again, this is, you've made a career out of scaring the heck out of us, but with good intention. And I really appreciate the quality of your work and the consistency of your work.
Thank you.
I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
I'm really proud of you.
Thank you.
Thanks
Very
for being
much.
on eTown again.
Really appreciate it. Thank you, Nick.
Yeah.